Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this reading of Bury Me Home. My name is Sahar, and I'm the artist and playwright. And I will be reading for me in the script.
My name is Wendy Nogales, and I will be reading for Nasreen.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Barrero, and today I'll be reading Hasna.
My name is Mayunika Barrero, and I will be reading for Samina.
Part 1, Introductions. I know you know me, but for the recording's sake, I'm going to say my name. My name is Sahar Ishtiaque Ullah. I was born in 1982 in Fort Lauderdale, USA. What is your name? Where were you born? When were you born?
I was born in 1956 in Shittigang in a hospital.
1970, Shittigang? In a hospital.
Nasreen Kudus. I was born in Jashore. I was born at home.
And when were you born, Auntie?
Oh, a long, long time ago. 1950. It's on my Facebook.
Part 2, the Liberation War. Where were you during the 1971 war?
I was first in Feni. I was in 10th grade when the war started. The schools closed. I went to the village. Then we went back to Feni. Then back to Shittigang. I remember our people went to India.
My parents said they took us to the countryside, to the villages. They stayed with family.
I just finished my master's at Dhaka University. We lived in Kakrail.
What do you most remember from that time?
The Rajakar dropped bombs. I still remember the sounds. One bomb would explode and form a lake, a big pond. At night, they were falling.
My parents remember hearing the bombs.
There were bombs we could hear every day.
What do you most remember from that time?
I just didn't think those days would come back. Everybody wants to forget.
My mama was Muslim League. My father was Awami League. A lot of refugees stayed at our home.
I don't remember much.
Because you were a baby? Do you remember your parents talking about it, Auntie?
Mostly my mother told stories. I learned about the war in school. In Bangladesh, a lot of people died. That's the sad part. But after the war, they won. We all used to feel great that Bangladesh was an independent country. It was good for our country. And when it was under Pakistan, we didn't have a lot of opportunities.
What do you most remember from that time?
My uncle was involved in revolutionary activity. He was arrested and in jail until the war ended. I remember the night the war broke out. My aunt jumped across the brick wall. Where she went, we did not know. She was hiding because she was afraid she was going to be arrested too.
What do you most remember from that time?
It lasted for 9 months. It was horrible after that. We basically hid inside our home. We survived on molasses, milk, rice, and lentils. The people in villages suffered so much. My uncle had hired workers from Pakistan. He sheltered them. And when all those areas were taken over by the Pakistani army, my uncle was arrested and ordered to be killed. The workers pleaded for his life. He was released. His house was looted. They would come inside and attack people for different reasons. Young women, young men. I remember one day a tank stopping in front of the house. My father was so nervous, he asked my mother for a cup of tea.
He thought it might make him feel better, huh?
It was so funny.
Do you remember when the war was over?
Yes, that time I was in Chittagong. That day my grandpa died. The first day, the war finished in Dhaka. The next day, the war ended in Chittagong. My Nana died that day. My mother and father were in Feni.
Do you remember how you felt?
We were scared. Who was alive? Who died? We were scared. We were happy and we were worried about my mama.
Even though he was a member of the Muslim League, he was against the occupation. He protected people from the Pakistani army, right?
He was a good man. That's why he was saved.
Do you remember when the war was over?
We heard the news. I think it was through BBC News and through Mukti Bahini News.
Was it by television or radio?
Oh no, dear. We did not have television. I hid my mother's savings under the mattress. When the war was over, I took everything out and left 100 taka note inside. There were different reactions from different people. There was mixed feelings. There was a lot of joy, but we didn't know what to expect.
Part 3, exit. Did you ever think you were going to leave Bangladesh? When did you decide to leave Bangladesh?
I thought I might study abroad and then come back.
I didn't decide to leave. I got married. 1987.
No, I never thought I was going to leave.
Did you ever think you were going to leave Bangladesh? When did you decide to leave Bangladesh?
I got married. 1987. Within 2 months, I came with him. I came as a tourist, and then later, I applied for a green card. When I was getting married, even then I didn't think. I thought I would finish high school.
1979, we came to America. I married in 1974. We stayed in Dhaka University. We never thought about leaving. When we got married, your daddy applied every year for scholarships. One was for Belgium, one for America. I asked Polish Baha'i about it. He asked me, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "America." So he said, "Okay, then go there." My father was excited. He was more excited than me.
I left Bangladesh in 1972. We got married within a week. Those days, we were all programmed to accept this as a common thing. Life had been disrupted by the war. Going to England, it was one step ahead. I never thought it would be hard.
So you went from Dhaka to London to Mosul to Kuala Lumpur. What brought you to the US?
I think your uncle has a problem.
Part 4, arrival. Did you ever imagine you would live in the United States? When did you realize you were not moving back?
My brother was already in America. My father had died. I wanted my mother to come live with us. Things seem so long ago. Was I that person?
Before marriage, I never imagined I would leave. We watched TV and sitcoms. There was a show called Dallas.
Mm.
I can't remember. $6 Million Man, Wonder Woman. We had a little idea about America. America was neater than Bangladesh. The roads were nice. Beaches were nice. There's one thing to see it on TV, and it's another thing to see it with your own eyes.
When I came, I never thought I wanted to stay. Then your daddy did a PhD. We thought we will stay. Then he applied for a job. Then we stayed. There was no plan.
Did you ever imagine you would live in the United States? When did you realize you were not moving back?
When I got my green card, your dad applied for a green card. We went to visit Bangladesh and we came back. We were still thinking we might go home. If I didn't come with your daddy, he would not have ever stayed. He was scared to be alone. He can't do anything without me.
When I came from Bangladesh, I was in an apartment.
In Miami, right?
Yes, in Miami. It was smaller than our apartment in Bangladesh, but it was neat. I couldn't speak English at all. Most of the things I used to like. Everything seemed beautiful. Like, for example, in the house there was a vacuum. We didn't have that in Bangladesh. A washing machine, dryer. Maybe those who were rich, they might have had those things. But in the middle class, we didn't have those things. We didn't have hot water.
When did you realize you were not moving back?
I knew I would go to visit Bangladesh, but I would not ever stay permanently. Once the kids started school, we didn't think we would return. Now, our situation is different. If your uncle thinks about it now, I would go back. I always missed home, but my priorities were my kids, their education, your uncle's job. Now they are older, settled down, finished with their studies. But if your uncle doesn't want to go, I won't go.
When I came here, I was always scared. How are they going to wash my body when I die? Then I wanted to see. A baby had open heart surgery. She died. Her mom was very young. When Maulana received the news, he called your dad and said, "Bring your wife." I brought the parents to our home. Then we dropped them off at their hotel. Then I learned. The baby was so beautiful. I have bathed several babies. I bathed your Salim, uncle's baby. We bathed all kinds of bodies. I got more involved. I got more courage. I have washed so many women, but I cannot tell their secrets. We keep their secrets.
Part 5, Death and Burial. In our community, a lot of people talk about wanting to be buried back home. Have you ever felt or wanted that?
I always believe this is a sad situation. 25 years ago, I didn't know how bodies were processed to be sent. Now I know, and I think it is not right. My friend, she was sent back, and her own family said, "Why did you send her?" Now I think if I die, bury me here. If I die visiting Bangladesh, bury me there.
In our community, a lot of people talk about wanting to be buried back home. Have you ever felt or wanted that?
A lot of people, like me, have none of their family members there. They worry about who will visit them. Family members pressure others to send them back. I told your uncle, if anything happens to me, you will bury me here. My husband didn't want to talk about it. I told Tasnim the same. The sad thing is, I've never mentioned this to my sisters. Now, speaking with you, I feel I should be clear.
In our community, a lot of people talk about wanting to be buried back home. Have you ever felt or wanted that?
That was never a question because my mother came to live with me in Boston. I don't know how it came to me, but my mother did not think she was going back. When she died, my brother was in Texas. He came to take her to Bangladesh. I think my mother subconsciously knew she was not going back. She didn't want to go anywhere else. I wanted to buy the plot beside her in Boston. I wanted to be buried beside her. I'm here in Florida now. I don't want my body to go to Boston now, although my friends would be very happy.
Have you ever discussed this with your husband or kids?
No, I haven't, but I think they would know. Yes, she would like to be buried here. I talk mostly about it with your mom.
If you could choose where you could be buried, where would that be?
I never thought I would move from Sharon. You never know. If Allah wants, I might go to Boston and die there. One of my friends, her husband died in South India while on vacation, and he was buried there, and she came back.
Your own mother is buried here, in America, in Boston. It seems you have permission to be wherever you are. What was the first funeral you attended in the United States?
My mom's funeral is the first I attended in the US, and the first the Bangladeshis of Boston attended. If it happens, it will happen. I have enormous faith in Allah.
If you could choose where you could be buried, where would that be?
Mecca or Medina. If I had a choice, that's where.
If you could choose where you could be buried, where would that be?
Makkah or Medina.
What was the first funeral you attended in the United States?
The first one I remember most clearly was when Anu died. It was really unexpected. Anu was really young. It was shocking.
In our community, a lot of people talk about wanting to be buried back home. Have you ever felt or wanted that?
They think if they're buried in Bangladesh, they will go to heaven. That is their country. It's a Muslim country. They don't understand. Before, people didn't understand. I've explained this to our community. They're worried about what happens to the body.
Because you believe the soul can still feel pain for the comfort of the dead?
Where I die, bury me there. That is how it has to be. That's why we have to leave behind righteous people. If 10 people say you are good, you go to heaven. You can visit a grave wherever you are.
So then it's good to be good to the people around you, right?
Yes. I used to tell my son, I don't want to die here. Send my body to Bangladesh. And he used to say, when I die, send me too. He used to joke. Now I think I should not have said that. I used to say, why would I send you? This is your country.
What was the most beautiful funeral you saw?
The Maulana who was taken to prison, when he died, thousands and thousands of people came. I've seen big funerals, but I have not seen one like this. The saddest funeral, a young man's wife died. She was young. She died of cancer. They fell in love with each other and then came here.
During the current pandemic, many people have been unable to attend funerals of loved ones or see them before they died. What does that make you think about?
My father died 2 years ago. I was here.
You couldn't be with him.
The car brought the body from the hospital to our home. Outside the house, that is where he was bathed. And they took him to a graveyard. If anyone dies, they come home first, even before the body arrives. The house becomes full waiting for them. There is mental satisfaction. Here it is really hard. Sometimes you are alone and have to deal with it on your own.
During the current pandemic, many people have been unable to attend funerals of loved ones or see them before they died. What does that make you think about?
The situation now, we're hearing even immediate family members cannot attend funerals. It's really heartbreaking. I don't really know what we can do. Even here, if you die, no one can visit. Even in Bangladesh, no one can visit.
We do funeral arrangements from home now. I don't go anymore. Those who aren't afraid, they go to bathe the dead. People are mostly afraid that nobody will come to visit. For example, Maruf's uncle is sick. We can't visit him. Nobody is going to anybody's house. Nobody is coming to anybody's house. In Bangladesh, a daughter lives on the bottom floor. Parents live above, but they aren't visiting each other. Everywhere is the same.
Part 6, home. Where is home for you? Did you ever think this is my home?
Out of my 70 years of life, the most I spent is in Boston. I have lots of homes.
I still never think this is my home. Whenever I go to Bangladesh, I never remember I have a home here. I don't know why.
Home is Bangladesh. Here. My kids are here. My husband is here. That's a tough thing.
Does America ever feel like home for you?
No. Maybe for staying, it is a better place, better opportunities, but I have no family members here.
But you spent most of your life here. It's amazing where our minds go. We think about a time and place where we were loved and surrounded by love.
Now your dad thinks about his childhood, about teaching there. He thinks about his old friends. I just stay here. I don't think this is my home. Whatever I have, I give it to my kids. I know this is your home. You won't leave here.
What about Florida or America do you like the most?
Everything is the same to me.
Part 7. Who are you responsible for? Tell me about the first voted in the United States. How did it make you feel?
I think it was Clinton, not the first Bush. I would listen to your uncle. I wouldn't understand. I didn't find interest. For men, it seems like voting is a really important thing. People who vote, they believe it is their duty.
We got our citizenship when Clinton was president. For my first vote, I registered as an independent. I voted for the Democrats. I call them the spineless Democrats. I was annoyed. I was disappointed in his choice for vice president.
I have seen a lot of presidents. Carter, Reagan, Father Bush, some Bush, Clinton, the black one, Obama, and now the crazy one. Last time I knew the crazy one was going to win. Everything is a mess now. We will mail in our votes.
When people tell you they want to immigrate to the United States, how do you respond?
In this situation, I don't think this government is good to foreigners. I don't think it would be a good decision. Those of us who were here for a long time have seen what has happened before and what is happening now. If I tell this to those who are in Bangladesh, they will say that you can say that because you live there. Maybe for those who are struggling in Bangladesh, they might think that the situation is better. It really depends on one's situation.
I'll tell them, come over. If you are willing to tolerate insults and work hard. It was never a life of roses. I am a tiny person. I had to be tough both physically and mentally to survive. If I could do it, you could do it. If you want to immigrate, don't expect a field of roses. There are many people who came and didn't make it, and they went back.
I think they're crazy. They have to survive and live first, then we'll see.
Who do you feel responsible for?
Most of the money still goes back home, except for masjids. I give money here. But for poor people and the needy people, because there's no social welfare or anything for them, definitely it goes back home. I cannot shift my ideas here yet the way that maybe I should, but I'm not there because I know the poverty. I do now ask your mom about the needy here. I give her money to give to people here.
Who do you feel responsible for?
I am a housewife. Financially, I can't help anyone. I feel both for Bangladesh and here. Even if I wanted to help my family in Bangladesh, I cannot. So if my friends, if my neighbors need help, I can help. At some point, you have to let something go. Where we are buried, we don't have a choice. So where I am, I take the opportunities.
Who do you feel responsible for?
Because I live here, the people here are my first priority, then Bangladesh. I make money here, I eat here, I live here. They have a right over me. I do it for my blessings. It will go to my grave. I don't think anywhere is my home. Now, I think my real home is where my son is buried. That is my real home.
Thank you so much for doing that reading. And we're going to move on to our reflections on the script. So I'd like for you to introduce yourself again, if you could, and please tell me your name, how old you are, what year you were born, and where were you born, and where do you live now?
Me first.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Wendy Nogales. I was born in 1980 in a suburb of Washington, D.C., and I live not far from there.
Jocelyn.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to go through all the questions with her first. I apologize. So my name is Jocelyn Barrero. I was born in 1974. I was born in Yukon, Canada, and I currently reside on Long Island, New York.
My name is Mayina Kubarero. I was born in Manhattan, and now I live on Long Island, and I was born in 2006.
Oh, you might have frozen. I think we lost connection. So just to let you know, Jocelyn.
Hello?
I think we lost connection, just to let you know what's going on. We lost video.
Okay.
So
Do we start over?
I'm not sure. It hasn't come back yet. I'll let you know. Gosh, it must be so difficult not being able to see what's going on.
So you lost Wendy?
No. This is Wendy. We lost Sahar.
Oh, okay.
So you're in New York?
Yes, we're on Long Island, and
But you did power eventually?
Yeah, we lost power for about 6 hours on Tuesday.
Wow.
And
okay.
then soon after that, all our services died out. We have no internet, no cable or landline telephone, and we're going into day 3.
Yeah, day 3. I was just watching.
Thank you for doing that reading with me. I'm so happy that we were able to get together. We're going to move on to our conversation part, our reflection on the script, and I'm going to ask you some questions similar to the questions I asked the women. So the first question is, what is your name? Where were you born and when were you born? And where do you currently live?
My name is Wendy Nogales. I was born in a suburb of Washington, D.C. in 1980, and I live not too far from there.
My name is Jocelyn Barrero. I was born in 1974. I was born in Yukon, Canada, and I currently reside on Long Island, New York.
My name is Mayina Kubarero. I was born in 2006. I was born in Manhattan, New York, and now I live on Long Island.
Excellent. So I asked the ladies the women that I spoke with about a little bit about their journey of what brought them here. So I'm going to ask you, where are your parents from, and to kind of trace your journey, and tell me a little bit about how you arrived at the place you currently live. And then if you could tell me about when approximately did your ancestors arrive in the Americas?
Okay, so my father is Bolivian and my mother is Cuban. And when my mother was very young, I believe 5 or 6, her whole family left Cuba in the early 1960s after Castro took power. And they were allowed to leave with nothing but the clothes on their backs. So before they left, they gave away all of their earthly possessions, because whatever they weren't able to carry with them on their person was going to be seized by the government. So They don't have any family pictures except ones that were held by people they know. And they came here, they came to Florida to live with one of my grandmother's sisters, and then very quickly came to Washington, D.C., and were aided by their church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And my grandfather was given jobs, security jobs, and helped by people from the church. My father came here, and when he was in his 20s, to Washington, D.C. He lived with one of his friends. He knew no English. He knew no English, and he met my mom at church, and he just has sacrificed his whole life for his family. And they got married close to Washington, D.C. And at first, they struggled. They lived in a very small apartment, and slowly but surely, my father built a business, and we were able to move to the suburbs and be able to go to a school that was safe for us, because where we lived was not safe. And keep going, or keep going to me, or that's where they're from, and then is that good? Move on.
It's good. I was going to ask you, because I put a call for Indigenous readers. So
Yes.
if you could tell me a little bit about how you identify as Indigenous. So I was wondering if you know approximately where and when your ancestors arrived in the Americas.
My ancestors have been in the Americas since the beginning of humanity. They come from the Andean mountains. We are, my father knows, my father speaks Quechua as well as Spanish, and that's the language of the Incas and the Aymaras. And my mother's side of the family came to the Americas in the early 1960s.
Thank you. Jocelyn and Minaku, I mean, Minaku, she's gonna she has like a cheat sheet. Like I give it, yeah, whoever wants to go first.
Okay, so this is Jocelyn. My parents are from Yukon, Canada, and that's where I was born. And how I landed over here in Long Island, New York, that's a little bit of a journey. I traveled and lived in various places across Canada, and I was living in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, from about 2000 to 2005. And in 2005, I met my husband, and we were married within 3 months. We were married pretty quick. And he was from, or he was born and raised in New York, and so we both decided to get married and live in New York. And my ancestors, I'm from the Tlingit Nation, and our traditional territory spans across Alaska, British Columbia, and Yukon. And my ancestors have been there since time immemorial. And now I'm living in the I believe the Shinnecock, Ramapo, Lenape region. So I always identify the lands that I'm on and acknowledge the ancestors here on these lands. And Mainaku.
Minaku, how'd you end up in Manhattan?
Well, like my parents, they lived in the city for a bit after getting married, and my brother was there when I was born in the city, and so was my sister. And then we moved to Long Island when I was really young, so I don't know why we moved here, but we did. And I think it was like 3, I think somewhere around that age. So I don't remember a lot of it, but
Well, that's the conversation, right? Why did we move? Why are we here? How did we get here? Um, and I think like, I mean, when we were reading what the women were saying, like for some of them, it wasn't even like a clear decision, right? Like one of the aunties, she said, I didn't decide, right? I got married. And then like my mother was like, we didn't really know. We had no plan. And then like Nasrina, I mean, they were all throwing shade at their husbands. Like Nasrina auntie's like, I think your uncle has a problem. Right? So my next question is, I asked these women about the Liberation War of 1971 because they're the war generation and that was the formative event of their generation. What would you say is the event of your elders, of your parents, of your mother's generation?
For me, for me, it would be Castro taking power in Cuba in the late 1950s, early 1960s, because that's the reason she came to the United States. So I wouldn't exist, her whole family wouldn't exist without that moment happening. She remembers a little bit of it. And then they came here during the Civil Rights Movement, and so they were living in Washington, D.C. So it was interesting to hear her perspectives as a tiny person and an immigrant surrounded by the Civil Rights Movement and how she processed that in her environment. So those two things, to me, when we speak, those two things seem to have been big moments for her. And when I think about her as a person, I think about how both of those things really did affect her.
Jocelyn?
Yes, I think this would probably be a great conversation to have with my mother.
Yeah.
But just to think about her generation, she was born in the early 50s, and the decade before that, I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, but one of the most impactful events around that time for Yukon, Canada, was the Alaska Highway being built through British Columbia and Yukon. That had a huge impact on the Tlingit traditional ways, and a lot of strangers, foreigners, coming through our countryside. And with that, there was a lot of like just destruction and just a very negative impact on our traditional ways. And also in the 60s, I don't know if anybody has ever heard of the 60s scoop in Canada. It's something that really impacted the Indigenous communities all across Canada, where the government, social services took it upon themselves to decide that Indigenous families were not taking proper care of their children. And a lot of the Indigenous children were taken from their homes and put into foster homes, foster care, disconnected the children from their culture, their language, their mothers, their parents, their grandparents, their way of living. So that is another huge event that impacted our Indigenous cultural ways. So those two events were probably the most prominent.
Minaku, what would you say is the
Okay.
event of your mom's generation?
Mhm.
I honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't, like, I don't know.
Another
What would
great conversation to be had.
yeah, yeah. What would you say in recent memory, Minaku? Like what in your like among your classmates and friends, like in terms of recent events, like what do you think is something that your age group has considered as being really important and something that has been a topic of discussion?
It wasn't real. Well, it was around the time we were born, but 9/11
Yeah.
still does have a huge impact on like my classmates and everybody like still in school, and honestly just still everyone still living here in America.
Mhm.
But we have to talk about it every year, and of course
Class?
it's a really terrible time to remember, but it still impacts us and my classmates.
Mm. Could you tell me a little bit about how, like, what kinds of conversations that you have about 9/11?
So when we're talking about it, we talk about like the people who started it, why they did it, like how it was done. Okay, hard to talk.
Mm.
Just the kind of people that died. Some people not expecting it, thinking they were gonna have a normal day and ended up losing their life. Their family members losing their lives, having to deal with the loss of family and friends.
Hello?
I think it froze again. Yep, we lost video again.
Is it Sahar or Wendy that's still there?
It's Wendy still.
Okay.
There, I believe Sahar is trying to log back in.
Oh my goodness.
Hello.
Oh, this is very interesting. This is the first time I've had so many technical difficulties. um, as a person,
Always freeze. You freeze looking so like it takes me a minute to see that you're frozen because you just freeze listening. And so I was like, and then you leave and I'm like, okay, we're frozen.
I was listening to Minaku talking about her conversations with classmates and in class about 9/11, and then it cut off. And I don't know if you were continuing to say anything, Minaku. So if you would like,
What part did you like hear?
huh? Go ahead. What did I hear?
Yeah, before you cut off.
I heard you said that it seemed like that's the conversation, or you're taught about why people did it, how they did it, and then it cut off.
Okay. We're also talking about like just kind of people who lost their lives on that day when they thought they were gonna go in for a normal day at work or just a normal day of living, and they ended up losing their life, or a family member ended up losing their life. And also what the school did when 9/11 happened, and the panic that everyone was going through, like them being afraid about what was going to happen next and not knowing what to do.
Thank you. It's so interesting to hear from you because that's not part of the history lesson, right? That I had when I was in middle or high school. 9/11 happened when I was a freshman in college, and I very clearly remember that moment, and I also very clearly remember the impact it had on my community. Like it was immediate, right? The United States declared war. And so many people in my community were like, okay, they're declaring war on whom? And it became really clear as the years went by, it was not just other countries, right? It was also communities in the United States. Um, so I would say for my generation too, or for particular people in my generation and certain communities, that was one of the big events. And probably the elections of Obama and then the elections of Trump. Um, so moving on to the next question. This is a question about burial. So I, you know, it was actually very easy for me to speak to the aunties and my mother about burial practices because it's a conversation that's been ongoing with my mom and in the community. And as you read, like she's somebody who bathes the dead. So I grew up hearing a lot of people come to my house and talk about it and argue about it and get into fights about it. So my question to all of you is this a conversation that you've had with your family and friends or elders about where you would like to be buried? And have your elders had this conversation with you about their desires of where they'd like to be buried?
My mother passed away 5 years ago. And we did talk about it. And what she always told me was that she wanted me and my siblings to do whatever would give us the most peace, because that was always what was most important to her, was us. So she's with me. And she'll always be with me. And I'll tell my children the same thing, that whatever they will bring the most peace is the only thing that matters to me. But if I have a choice, I'll be with her. So that's.
Thank you. Team Borrero, Jocelyn Mainaku.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
This is Jocelyn. I just wanted to just backtrack just for 1 second, and I really wanted to say, add one other event from the last question, another impactful event, and that was the residential school system. Boarding schools is what they're known as in the United States, but the residential school system really impacted my parents' generation. Huge detrimental effects, intergenerational trauma with that one. But moving forward, having conversations with elders and with my mom about how they would like to be buried. I don't think we ever went into any great depths with our Tlingit traditions. We have a system, and we work through our clan system. We have various clans. We have 5 clans in our community, and each of the 5 clans are divided in half. One half is known as Wolf Moiety, other half is Crow Moiety, and when a community member passes away, the other clan takes care of the other clan. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the work, the food preparation, taking care of the body, the family, the grieving family, is a work of the opposite clan. And burial, I know my mother, she would want to be cremated. Mm-hmm. And her ways have always been, like, her own personal views is just simple is best. And while we were reading through the script, the one, I can't remember who it was, but someone had said, I lived here, if I die here, then bury me here. Yeah. Yeah. So my mom, that sounded like just exactly like my mom. Like, whatever's the easiest, I don't want to burden you, just do like what's best for all.
Mainaka?
All right, so me and my mother haven't had that conversation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say on that.
Yeah, the last reading I did was with the 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and 18-year-old. Mm-hmm. And especially the 12 and 13-year-old, they were both like, I'm gonna ask them. And I was thinking, oh no, they're gonna leave the reading and they're gonna be like, where would you like to be buried, Mom and Dad? When we were younger and my mom would just tell, like, she says in the script, like, I used to tell my kids, send me home. And then I think I should not have said that because, like, as she says, like, she had to bury her own son. We used to say, like, why do you always have this conversation with us? And she's like, I just want to make sure you know. I want to make sure that you know. And she's the one who was like, wherever I am, that's where I have to be. That's where I'm going to be buried. And Samina said the same thing. So my next question is, and Jocelyn, you kind of answered that, but you can say more, is what from the script can you imagine your own parents saying, or that you see yourself saying?
So for me, it was something that you asked of everybody, or no, that your response to, I think, Nasreen, was that, so you should be good to everyone around you. And that just, to me, just sounds like my mom. My mom was my mom was just pure love and joy, and everyone loved her and she loved everyone. So to me, like, whenever I think of goodness and community, I think of my mother. So that was the big part that stood out to me.
Yes, this is Jocelyn. Just to go back and I really just kind of repeat what I said previously. I can't remember who it was in the script that said it, but I definitely could imagine my mom saying, you know, this is where I live. If I die here, then just bury me here. Mainaku?
I'm not sure. There's a lot of things in this script, but I don't really imagine myself or anyone else in my life saying anything that was a topic in this script. So.
All right. So I'm going to ask the final question that I asked the ladies. And this is the second to last question. Is that if someone were to reach out to you, like whether social media or a family member or a relative or a friend were to reach out to you now, and considering all that we know from our histories and then the current situation that we're in and how our government is dealing with the pandemic, and also considering the uprisings for Black lives that are all across the country, what would you say to someone who comes to you and says that they would like to come to the U.S. and would like to immigrate here? How would you respond?
Well, for me, I felt very emotional when I read what Nasreen said. Basically because I had a front row seat to watching my parents, my dad in particular, coming here and building a life, and how hard it was for him. But since the current administration took power and the violence, so I previously would have said something to the effect of what Nasreen said, that it's not easy. Basically everything she said, but basically just listening to someone call us rapists and murderers and watching people cheer that, it's scary, and I don't feel safe, and I would not feel comfortable telling anyone to come here now because it hasn't been safe, and it's not currently safe. So to me, it would be a mixture of that and what Nasreen said. But now I would never, because like people that look like me, my children would be taken from me. Like, it's just not safe. So yeah.
This is Jocelyn, and the first thing that comes to my mind is really the question of they're expressing their desire to come to the U.S. now. How really awful and bad and horrible is it in your own country to want to leave there to come to this in our current situation? Yeah, I would want to better understand the reasons why they would want to move to the U.S. now. Because the current situation here is just, I mean, and with the pandemic, it's global. And there's so many travel restrictions put in place already. And, you know, a lot of borders are closed right now. I think it probably would be a real challenge for anybody to try to come to the U.S. anyway, with how things are. And hopefully with all this stuff that's surfacing now, all these challenges that we're facing now, I really hope that tomorrow will be a brighter day and the future holds holds the light, so to speak, and that we're moving towards, equality, equity, balance in a more peaceful world, a more peaceful country. That's what I have hopes and prayers for. And maybe in the future, it might be a better place for this person to come to at that time, once we're able to get through these struggles.
So for me, it's like kind of especially here coming here during this time when the pandemic is a really big thing and our government isn't really doing a great job of controlling it, saying it'll go away on its own. It's not. And unfortunately, there's a lot of racism here, even if you might think it's not, as common as it was, like in more old times, but, there are kids in cages as we speak, like taken away from their families, but in cages because the government doesn't like them being here simply because they aren't American and they aren't from here. They weren't born here, so country is, low-key a joke right now because Kanye West is running for president and Donald Trump is kind of acting like a child, worrying about an app, wanting to ban an app, worrying about that over the global pandemic because this app is doing a Trump rally for him and he's all mad about that. He should be worrying about bigger things. He's not. And it's sad to see what's going on around me, going on around everybody that's living here. And like my mom said, how bad are things in your country to want to come to ours? Because we aren't in the best situation right now. So, yeah.
Thank you. So my last question, you can pull up your what you wrote during the free writing exercise. The last question is, after reading the script, what was your initial response? What were you feeling? What are some of the words that you thought of, or themes, or any phrases and ideas that really struck you? If you could share that now.
My just reaction to the whole piece in general was that I was thankful for it, thankful for you and your family, thankful to have history captured, and yeah, you made me feel things, and I like feeling things. I like thinking about things. I like learning about myself, and I feel like I'm going to continue to ask myself questions, and so I'm very grateful to you in the work that you did. And one of the things that hit me really hard was, I can't remember who said it, but they said, "This is your country." I think comparing, I think it was in the burial section, why this is your country, so you should be buried here, speaking to your generation, the generation of children. And so it's interesting because I have two sides of my family, and my father from Bolivia, the indigenous side of my family, I was always surrounded by photos, surrounded by music, surrounded by food, and always told to be proud of my heritage and proud of my country and where I came from. And the Cuban side of my family, my grandmother was so angry at Castro. And so she just really, from when we were little, was like, when I would identify as Latin American, she would say, you're not Latin American. Don't say that. This is your country. You're American. And I remember just being so confused as a child. But also they were very proud of their ethnicity too, like the music, the language, the food, everything. So I just remember when you said it, this is your country. And that was something that I heard a lot growing up. And as a child, it was very confusing to try to navigate being proud of my culture and my heritage. And yet being sent mixed signals about that. So that was very impactful for me. And then it was funny, the MacGyver moment, and just knowing that you had no idea what that was. And I mean, those are like a little old for me, but when I would visit my country, we would go to Bolivia, and that was a lot of how, like, as a child, how we would like communicate with each other, and we would, my family's understanding of what America was, a lot of it came from that, and we would watch American shows dubbed in Spanish when I would go to Bolivia. And so like that, the whole line and the reaction to the line and the understanding that like those shows are little time capsules, and I don't know, that just really brought back a lot of feelings and memories. And so that moment meant a lot to me. And Nasreen talking about what she would tell people who wanted to immigrate here. And what I shared about when you said, be good to the people around you. Those were moments, and that made me think about my mom and how she was loved by everyone around her. And then it made me think about what that means in your culture. And I thought that was beautiful. So, yeah. Thank you.
Did we lose Sahar again?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
I should always say when I'm done.
I'm here.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jocelyn.
Okay. This is Jocelyn speaking, and how did the script make me feel? I had a lot of mixed emotions. I was reading for the Hasna, and that generation would have been my mom's generation. So just thinking about the age groups of the people in the script, and those generations, and I felt a little bit like I was stepping in my mom's shoes for a moment, and that my daughter was kind of stepping into my generation for a moment. And the script overall, like just the title, Bury Me Home, just saying that and hearing that and reading that as like the first words before you flip or scroll through the pages, like the feeling is like, oh my gosh, bury me home. What is this about? Okay, we're going to be having a little bit of a solemn conversation, serious conversation. And I really feel like my initial response during the free writing was that I haven't been serious enough about taking the responsibility of death and death of family members, and for myself that you know, a lot of people really turn inwards when the topic is brought up. Like it's almost like taboo or shunned in a way where it's like, oh, you're gonna make me feel all morbid having this conversation, and or if someone else brings it up, it's like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about you dying. I'm like, we're not going to talk about people dying right now. So yeah, I just feel overall that and you know, reading the script with my daughter, like, you know, going through the questions through the end. And even for myself, it's like we have a lot of conversations, important and serious conversations really need to be had. And you know, it's really, in the end, it's about legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, having, you know, how would I like my life to be celebrated when I leave this earthly plane? And, you know, so it's serious stuff, and that's really overall, I just feel I need to take that time to have those conversations, and also take more responsibility. Mainaku, your thoughts? How did it make you feel?
Well, for one, I'm glad that people, when you first read this through, you can understand what other people went through in their lives, their hardships, what they had to go through as like children, young adults, and what they grew up to become.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that more people need to read this, because more parents could have that realization like my mother did, and realize that they need to have these kinds of conversations with their kids, their children, and talk about this, because some of this stuff is like really important to talk about with your family. And when you read this, you realize how important this stuff is and how much you really need to talk about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so grateful that we were able to do this. I apologize again for all the technical difficulties. But I think like when something is more challenging and difficult, it's probably because the thing or the moment is more precious. So thank you so much. I will send you a link when all the readings go live, so that you can see what others had to say and other readers, how they reflected. And then you can share it with your own families and relatives and communities. And I'll also send you the invitation for the virtual watch party when all the commissions will be celebrated, so that you can join in. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and please stay in touch. And I'll send you all the things soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sahar.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.